Good afternoon, everybody. Michael DeCarlo here for DeCarlosDanger.com. We're currently, it's approximately 1:12 in the afternoon on 8 December 07. I hope everyone had marked their calendar yesterday and had some remembrance for the men and women who sacrificed for you on the 7th of December in 1941 in Pearl Harbor and have been sacrificing for you ever since. That brings me to my topic today, and that's accountability. And I've been researching different things. Let me start this out. Let me preface this on how I was motivated to do something like this. I was in Ohio approximately 2 years ago in my hometown. I had brought my 36-foot fifth wheel camper. Where I grew up is now a commercial mecca for the county. However, when I grew up there, it was a agrarian community would be a proper way to define it. Wasn't a lot of folks there, but since I've left and did my 20 years in the Navy, and then I've been retired now, Jesus, it's 9 years now. Jeez, woo! So I've been out a while, but one of the new neighbors or whatever, complained. I have parked the camper and stayed in it when I visited my mom and brought her grandkids to come see her numerous times through my career in the Navy and since then, and never had any problems. I mean, the neighborhood, I actually delivered newspapers to the neighborhood when I was a kid, and I grew up there. It isn't like, well, anyway, it was just somehow someone called the city, and the zoning guy came to the house and said I had to move. The zoning guy was a brother to one of my coaches in high school for basketball, and it really angered me. It did. It upset me tremendously. But then we get home, and I'm on this, you people messed with me, and after I gave you everything I've given you, kind of time, and let's just say I became more motivated to not be quiet and let it continue to just run over us. I mean, without any accountability for any of its actions. And when we came home, my smoking hot wife, who I give credit to at the end of every video, if you haven't noticed that, is special thanks, pointed out that, hey, this one guy that I had pointed out to her before I had some interaction with, look, he's in there for molesting this little girl. And I said, my head about popped off. Not really, but I became more interested in finding out more about him. So I actually went to City Hall and I requested his record. It cost me $5, and I got it. Now, during the review of his records, it was determined by me, and that's why I turned this over to the state's attorney general office, that the officer in question here committed 2 Class 6 felonies 2 years prior to being in any involvement or accusation with the little girl, 14-year-old child. So everything he says from that point forward, since he lied, is got to be considered false until proven that it's true. Because once you break your credibility and you no longer have integrity, nothing you say comes out of your mouth can be trusted. That's why it's so important to always tell the truth. Always. Always. So in order to attempt to try to understand a pattern, since I had already seen in a press release that another officer had lied, or not lied, but had violated policy and procedure, which, that she took an oath to do, so she compromised her integrity as well. So I was able to pull I didn't pull hers because that was published and that's in court right now, so they're not going to release anything. But I did pull Officer Michael Mitchell's file, and this was approximately 1 month before he passed away. And now Mr. Mitchell here, he worked in New Mexico and got involved in some fraudulent scheme and used the computer system for the FBI illegally 10 times prior to being hired by the city of Sierra Vista. So here's the tie-in that I've got here. I've got the Roy and Mitchell relationship. Alex Roy and Mike Mitchell, two former officers of Sierra Vista. Mr. Mitchell's committed suicide, and Mr. Roy has not been tried or even accused, because this is my determination here. Both of them are known liars because both of them broke their oath and used the computer system to look up information on others. They've signed documents. They were trained to use it. And this is done by, this is an FBI system, right? So both of them are known liars, and they both abuse power, and both of them were documented doing so. So what is the tie? The tie is the enforcement. The tie is the FBI. The tie is that federal money for law enforcement, right? I live in Sierra Vista, Arizona, where the only economic engine is Fort Huachuca or law enforcement, which is confiscation of wealth or property of others, and Border Patrol. So if you don't work for the government in one way, shape, or form, whether it be the federal, state, local, or county, or even school teachers, I consider to be public employees, because they are, you're a service economy around that. It's really the war machine showing its face, folks, because that's what it is. But so we have the federal government and the FBI, the law enforcement branch, with all its, its problems it's having over the last year. The people documented all this, but the problem I have is that all the people's names and everything that sign these people's records are now in power here. You can't figure out why I have a problem, because these two people have no integrity, and everybody that's covering up their butts and not prosecuting these people also have no integrity. But the way they're covering it up is through the money from the FBI, because the federal money, the federal law enforcement, and federal grants I see as the same monster. Without the federal money, this place is nothing. Without people being held accountable for their actions, you might as well just how much of your property do you just want to give away and surrender in taxes? Because you fear for your property and your life. How many of you are willing to surrender your property because you fear for your life and your property? So surrender your money through taxes to have somebody protect you that is a documented liar. Are you going to trust that person? I know that I don't. I know that I think the chief of police in Sierra Vista is a really good man. I really do. I think his hands are tied politically, because if he would take the actions that the most of us individual citizens would think are necessary to earn the citizens' trust again, or try in an attempt to reestablish a level of trust within the citizens of Sierra Vista, he would get a lot of pushback from the folks that he's worked with for 20 years, probably. A lot. Because they have their blue line. I live behind the thin green line. It's so incestuous, folks. It really, really is. Because without the federal money coming in, the police department is not going to have 65 people in it. Without the federal money coming in, this town of 50,000 claims, it's probably closer to 35, maybe 40, maybe even 30. The largest expanding business in town has been U-Haul on Fry for the last couple of years. They've been they bought up a lot of land and put up a lot of trailers. They're ready for people to start moving out. But going back to this tie-in with the federal government with these two guys, the system is made, this computer system is made so that it takes two-person TPI, two-person integrity, so that not one person can abuse the power without being checked on by somebody else. That system worked. It was documented. It's written down. It's on both of their records. However, they were not prosecuted for it. Was it that they weren't accused? They weren't accused. They were just said, hey, you did this. Hey, that's a felony. You were trained not to do this. That should have been termination, trial by jury. Done. And we wouldn't be here right now. And how Mitchell got hired here after having this stuff known? I mean, right up in the paper the other day, not the paper, I'm sorry, on the real press, not the media rag, the propaganda rag that wouldn't exist without the federal government's money in the state and city government's money, because they don't have enough advertisers in town to actually make it profitable. The only reason that's here is because of the federal footprint. And once you put that together and realize where the propaganda machine is and how big the microphone is, folks, it kind of really turns your stomach. But my assessment on this topic is this. The federal government and the money is more important to the government employees and obviously the politicians, what we've elected to represent ourselves against the machine of the government, have determined that they know more than you do about character, about integrity, and about trust. Or they've done the math and figured out that these people that had none of that stuff is going to cost all of us an arm and a leg. And when it does, U-Haul's ready to move us out. And y'all can have this town as a ghost town. Until the next war starts. And then the military industrial complex down the street at the drone factory and the military intelligence center of excellence. That's where the lie starts, folks. We'll start ramping up again and start spreading the propaganda throughout the media, whether it be television, Mockingbird, or print or radio, because they're already there. They're already on the payroll. They've already been bribed. They've already been compromised to make sure that they do what they're supposed to. Because if not, they're not going to be able to feed themselves anymore. And I'm guessing that that's a pretty big fear for a lot of folks, because having the ability to know where your next meal is coming from and be able to wipe your ass allows you to think a little bit further outside the box. And when you were encouraged to think outside the box when you served everyone, you were pretty sharp, even like Sailor of the Year sharp one time. When your mind starts going and you start putting parts together, and you start assembling them like you would assemble the systems within a submarine, and seeing how it all works, and understanding why everybody's confused, they're all following the misinformation and the redirection. I found it. I had a fix on it. And I want to finish it. The politicians don't understand that it's not about it's about an attempt to make this small town, the city, whatever you want to call it, protect the folks that are actually here. We're all veterans. We've all served you honorably. We didn't lie, cheat, steal, make fraudulent statements, abuse our powers. We served you honorably. These folks have no honor. These folks are not being held accountable because your politicians don't want to pay the toll. And it's the politicians' fault for not leading the government to be more accountable for its actions. That's my opinion here at thecarlosdanger.com. If you have an alternate one, please comment below. And if you like anything that I've had to say, please like and share. And we'll see if we can continue to put truth at the forefront of society. Michael DeCarlo for DeCarlosDanger.com, where everybody can laugh at a little ween joke. Peace. Today's segments are sponsored by EGC Racing. For more information, check out evergreencoin.org. And you see, it's having a background of information like I had about the faultiness of the federal government in prosecuting its criminals. And it leads, I mean, this was in the newspaper here where the Border Patrol agent was guilty of $100,000 in theft of gun parts. Well, parts is parts, and some things are fused. They make nuggets out of parts, right? Well, if you get enough parts, you can make a jalopy. I mean, Johnny Cash even wrote a song about it. The thing that jumps out at me, this happened in October, right? What else happened in October? Out west, specifically in October. I mean, this is the place that we had a Border Patrol agent killed by Fast and Furious, which is a gun smuggling operation. Brian Terry was killed out here, right? So the government created a condition to kill its own, which you find surprising. I mean, the previous segment, we talked about how our local government can't hold its own folks accountable. And when your local government can't hold its own folks accountable, the only logical reason is because it's not cost effective. How can preserving the liberty of the citizens that the government has been established to protect not be considered to be cost effective at any level? Things like this really, really make me want to vomit. And in other news, the Department of Defense announced it's going to have an audit. First ever, they claim. If you look at September 10th, 2001, you'll see that they did it before. Donald Rumsfeld even announced it on the news. They were missing $2.3 trillion. I remember this because I was in Guam. I was concerned about how I was going to get home since I had to pay $10,000 for artificial insemination for my wife at the time to have a child. Didn't add up that I was working next to a nuclear reactor at the time. But the next day, 9/11 happened. You guys do the math, because the Department of Defense can't. If you look at it, where the Pentagon was hit, I believe it was the accounting department of a branch. And in closing, folks, this is Michael DeCarlo signing off for DeCarlosDanger.com. Follow me on Facebook or Twitter, but not to the buffet table. If you'd like to donate to DeCarlos Danger, please do so here. Thank you. Please pay attention so you don't become a sheep.